Welcome to Stress and Purpose in Life podcast. This podcast is here for you listeners who want to get inspired by others and also to help to transform your life to creating a life free of stress and more purpose. What happens if your voice is taken from you and the pain is like, yeah, you don't know what to do about it. You can't speak anymore. Well, today's episode is just about that also. This episode is one of resilience, courage, and incredible power of finding your inner voice, and even in the darkest moments. And I'm honored to welcome Sarah Johnson, a woman who has a journey from suicide, paralysis, and deep healing, and has led her to a place of profound strength and purpose. And she knows firsthand how it's like to be trapped in silence, right? And today she's here to share how she fought back her way and also how she reclaimed her voice and speak up for herself. So Sarah's story is really powerful and moving. So let's hear it from you. And welcome, Sarah, to this show. How are you today?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, great. So can you tell us about your journey a little bit and what brought you to the place where your voice felt silent? What was that? What was happening to you at that time and place?
Well, I think kind of over the course of my life, I had many encounters of being told to be seen and not heard, and kind of silencing my opinion and just finding myself in different situations or career aspects or environments that I couldn't really share my opinion. I didn't feel comfortable really being myself. And when you become a mother, that can definitely amplify. You're trying to figure out how to be a mom and, listen to the advice of others, but then you're just not sure if that really fits for you. And I had gotten to a place of silencing myself for too long, and I was feeling trapped and dealing with postpartum depression. And I didn't really understand boundaries and learning how to set those that are healthy for ourselves and our families. And as you had mentioned, I had dealt with a scenario where I was feeling suicidal, and I was able to save myself and seek help. And unfortunately, that led to antidepressant medications, which are not designed for people to just get off. It's not a tool to use for a small amount of time. It's just to be continually the dose improved to improve your mood. And I was unaware of that. And I was also unaware that when you decide to get off of that, there's a protocol for that. And I was unaware of that as well. And I didn't want to go about life feeling numb to my life and the experiences I was having. And in 2020, I contracted long COVID. I had a whole host of symptoms that came onto my body, including neuropathy, a tremor. Migraines. I was working with a neurologist, and I was being tested for brain tumors and MS and Parkinson's disease. And in January of 2021, I had a medical emergency where I collapsed. And it started to appear as a stroke where I lost all sensation and motor function on the right side of my body. And on the way to the hospital, I lost all sensation on the left side of my body, which is very unusual. And during this experience, I was fully alert and awake in my brain. I could talk and think as fast as I'm talking to you now, but I didn't have the motor skills to actually speak for myself. And that's when I realized I was sort of trapped inside my body and I couldn't use my voice to advocate for myself.
And what were your thoughts and feelings in that moment? It must have been really scary.
It was terrifying.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's terrifying to have thoughts and feelings and opinions about what should happen next in a scenario like that, and being completely unable to communicate that. You can hear everything, I could see everything, I could blink and I could breathe, but I was unable to do anything else.
Oh. And what was that? How long was this in your? Was it during this emergency when you couldn't do that? Was it during a long period, or was it just a few hours, or was it for a moment? Or how long did you have this paralysis, and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, so the course of the entire experience was about 24 hours total, but I had lost complete sensation for at least 18 hours. So it started
Oh,
early in the morning, around 7:30 in the morning,
yeah.
and it lasted a good portion of the day while I was at the hospital, and then I was airlifted to a specialty hospital as well.
Okay. And that really came to be some kind of momentum for you when you reflected on the silence part of life, that you what it takes for strength and also to be able to get your voice heard, right? So, uh,
Yeah.
why do you think people struggle with that to speak up when they have are going through a crisis? If you just talk about it generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we're sort of conditioned to hold our tongue, socially, not to speak our minds. It's sort of frowned upon, and I honestly think it's not so much the fact that we're speaking up; it's how it's done. And I think over time, people can become very aggressive, or aren't approaching it in a way that's digestible for other people. Now, that's not to say people don't speak up for themselves; they absolutely do, and they absolutely should. But I think that there's a way to approach it with love. I think that that's really an important way to do it, is to show up in a space of loving yourself first and
Mm.
knowing that you're honoring yourself by using your voice and advocating for you, because you are, when it comes down to it, you are your best advocate. You know yourself best. You are with yourself every day. You hear your thoughts all day long. You are having an experience throughout the day with other people and in your environments. And other people can't see that or can't know that. And oftentimes we are having thoughts that we aren't sharing with others, that it feels violating to our core values.
Yeah.
And I think if you can come from a place of love, it's going to be a lot easier to have discussions or share your experiences with other people, because it's really important to share your voice, what your inner voice is saying to you.
Mm.
And your inner voice needs to match your outer voice.
But what do you think? What are the dangers when you are staying silent? Because people perhaps don't have that safe place where you feel that you can be vulnerable to speak up. For example, what can be the dangers of staying silent in those moments? Do you think?
There's a whole host of them. I think to start, you're telling yourself that you aren't as valuable as someone else. You're saying that what you have to say and what you believe is to be true is less important. What they have to say, what they're doing, how they want it to go is more important than you. And that there creates a disconnect between you and yourself, and what you really want out of your life. And when you are silencing yourself over and over and over again, you're creating a bigger gap in that disconnect from you and the version of you that has to show up to be around those people. And whether
Mm.
this is a close relationship or at work or family, what becomes dangerous is that disconnect between you and your true self, where you can't really say what you want to say or really be who you really are and match that inner voice to the outer voice. You are building resentment. You are struggling to be forgiving and kind and showing up from a place of love and compassion, because you are more concerned about making other people happy than yourself. And over time, you're creating layers of that, of where your happiness is deprioritized, your what you want out of life is deprioritized, and what they want is more important. And then you come
Mm.
to a place in your life, whether it's when the children leave the home and they're off living their own lives, or when a relationship splits up and you're like, well, who am I? Who am I supposed to
Mm.
be now? Because who I was for that person or for
Yeah.
those kids, and you're not you. And so people can find themselves in crisis because they don't really know what their identity is. And that can be a difficult problem. I lived through that. I experienced it myself. And so it's been a
I
really
think
long
many
road.
have. I mean, I also resonate with that a lot because depending on where you come from, I mean, this is really important for young people also. if you are in a moment where you are like bullied at school, perhaps, or you're at work being bullied, or whatever situation you are in, and you're feeling unworthy, then you can get silenced by others. So this is a
Yes.
really important message to get out there, because there are many people that resonate with this, I think, in different relationship, because you have different roles in life, as you say, and you can be speaking up in some roles and other roles not, but you have to be authentic. And I think that's really something that it's really interesting to hear you speak about this and have this as speciality, because this needs to be people need to learn this and get to know how to do it. So what
Yes.
would you say? What would you say to the listeners? What is the first step that they could take to, if they are in that situation, they don't feel balance in their authentic selves, and the balance in their outer voice? What would you give for tips for them to get started on on doing that, aligning them?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I honestly think it's getting to know your true self. Figure out who you are. Your identity is yours. And I think it's really easy to look outside of ourselves and let other people or movies or music or trends in fashion to tell us who we should be. And I think it's really important to really know who you are. And the way to start is just to start asking yourself questions. And it started with some of the silliest things for me. It was like, do I actually like this food? Or just because I've always eaten this food? Or do I actually like this music? Or is it because I just grew up listening to this music? So I really started
Mhm.
at like the very basic things. And once you go through that process of questioning, it's just asking a lot of questions of yourself, then you can start asking some of the deeper questions. Do I really hold that belief politically? Do I really believe in that in family? Is that how I want to live the rest of my life? And it's really just starting to ask yourself those questions. And the key piece here is listening to your voice. You need to pay attention and use your discernment of what's your voice and what's the voice that other people have given you, of what's expected of you, of what society does, what your partner expects. It's what is your voice versus the voice that other people have put in over the course of your
Yeah.
life. And once you kind of get really clear on that, it's going to be so easy to then have that reflected as your outer voice.
And that is, I think, so. This is so interesting subject. I love it, because this is, I mean, having those times to reflect on these things. Life just goes on, and then you hear everything from the external environment that you just get in your subconscious that you're not even aware of. And then when you sit down like that, as you say, and then you write down, you're like, okay, do I really like this? You have to dig deep then, because they are so rooted in you. What is
Yeah.
your
And
thoughts and what is other people's thoughts? So I think it's really
yeah,
interesting. And of course, the first step is to start writing, right? Start asking the right questions for you to get the right answers then.
exactly. Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
some people aren't journalers. They aren't great at writing it down. So use voice notes and listen back to it, because sometimes you can be having a whole conversation with yourself and not actually hear it. But then if you're willing to sit and play it for that 10 seconds or 30 seconds or a few minutes that you've talked to yourself and you hear yourself say it, it's such a different experience because you're like, oh, I actually believe that, or that doesn't sound very sincere. But you have to, when you hear that, then you know what other people are hearing when you're talking. And so it
Yeah.
really is evaluating and taking that time, but you have to make space for it, right? We have to set aside, time to really sit and do these things.
Yeah. So important.
And
And what
And
would you
I know,
say?
well, and I
Yeah,
don't want
sorry.
anyone else to have like an emergency where they can't use their voice. I want people to
No.
like make it a priority, because if you don't, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where it is an emergency, where you have to advocate for yourself. And I don't want you to have a freeze moment or a moment where you can't use your voice.
But I mean, people are in these different situations, and as you say, people can be depressed or stressed or being in an abusive relationship, or you have been like in some crisis. I mean, whatever crisis it could be. But what would you say to those people listening that they think, okay, my voice doesn't matter? What would you say to them? Because people are believing that. Some people are really believing that my voice doesn't matter. So
I thought the same thing. A few years ago when I was depressed and really down, I really didn't think I had any kind of worth. And I had to ask myself, why do I think that? Why do I think I have no worth? Because I'm not contributing, because I'm not playing the role everyone else told me to play. And it was asking my friend to tell me what she saw in me. And it was a mirror reflection. I just asked her to be honest with me. What are you seeing? And I had to be brave enough to listen to the answer because I didn't want her to just tell me something to make me happy. And that's speaking to my ego. I wanted her to really just be honest with me and tell me what she saw, but then also tell me, like, well, what am I adding to your life? And there were things she said that I didn't even know I was doing. And I think that that's really important is sometimes we are doing the simplest things and we don't think it's a big deal, but it actually is a very big deal to other people. And so if you're willing and brave enough to ask the people closest to you that love you and want what's best for you, they're going to be the best way to guide you on that path.
And that is really good because feedback is something that is something that we need to hear from others. Because if you don't believe it yourself and you hear other people say it, and then but you have to get it in yourself, okay, what the other people see in you, and then really value that. And then feedback is really good to have as a method. Is there any other strategies besides hearing your voice and also writing it down what your values are, or is there other systems also that you can use to because I think you have a program or something. What do you do with your clients that they get healed from this and really get their voice heard? So what are your strategies for them?
Yeah, so I actually encourage my clients to play a little, um, to try to remember the little kid inside and the big dreams that they had as a kid. And so we always start out with like, well, what was it that you wanted to be as a kid that you didn't actually go and do? And then we just sort of keep that in the back of our minds as we're going through these conversations. And I have a great program that I put together to help people ask the right questions. And I sort of walk them through that process week by week so that more and more can be revealed. It's sort of like unfolding the layers of it and really getting to the core of it. And it really doesn't take a lot of time, but they have a lot of breakthroughs. I've had incredible results with my clients because they've been able to tap into that playfulness aspect of it, of getting to know. It's sort of like when you get into a new relationship with someone, whether it's a friend or a romantic partner, it's kind of exciting because you're getting to know each other. You're hearing these stories and you're hearing who they really are. And it's sort of like that experience, but they're doing it for themselves and they're getting to know this version of them in their place in their life right now. And that's a really beautiful experience. It's like watching a flower kind of open up and bloom. And so by the end of the experience of working with me, they're these just strong, really empowered people because they feel like they know who they really are and what they want to do next.
Yeah, but that's something that we all want to have, right? Because people are just wandering off and they don't know where they are leaving. If they have a goal, they have to have a goal, and but if they don't know themselves, then that goal is not worth anything. So but where do you think if you look at the clients that comes to you, it's at what stage are they? I mean, are they seeking help? When is it important to seek help, do you think? Where are those people that come to you in their lives?
It is, yeah. I mean, a big part of people's healing journey can be done alone. But I think especially if you're starting out or if you've done it for a while and you feel a little bit stuck and you're not really sure how to continue to move forward and because you've tried a few things and they didn't work or they didn't last very long, I think it's really important to ask for help. And find somebody that really feels like they connect to you and they understand you and where you're at, because I've had a whole host of people in a variety. People have been on their spiritual journeys for a long time and it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. and we just kind of pick them up from there and we move them into a different space. But I've also had people who are just starting out and they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, great, let me give you little bits and pieces. And it's easy to get overwhelmed because you can take on too much to try to do too much. And that isn't sustainable. I mean, that works for a variety of things. If you take on too many skills at the same time, it can be overwhelming and you end up dropping it all because it's too much. But I think it's important to ask for help from the right people and people that feel to you that they understand you and that you really are seen and heard.
Important. And what do you think about the people that are listening now? I mean, what is the one message that you would give them if they are in a situation where they, in different relationships, depending on if it's with your spouse or if it's with your best friend? I mean, if you don't have that trust in yourself to speak out, what would the one message be to them to just start with the journey to try to do that? I mean, with your help and also on their own.
Yeah, I mean, start out on your own if you don't feel like you have a safe space. If it's a partner or a friend or something, if you truly don't feel like you have someone to go to, a grandparent, a teacher, a mentor, or something, start with yourself. Find something that you can start to ask those questions, either in a journal or in voice notes that you can refer back to. And then I would encourage you, because there's a lot of resources in nearly every community all over the planet. It doesn't really matter where you are. There are community events all of the time. And it's sort of like when you first go into a classroom and there's no one there, and then there's new kids and you're the new kid and it feels weird. And it's hard. It can be difficult to go into those situations. But just staying open is just my recommendation. When you stay open to receiving someone coming into your life to help you, it's remarkable the miracle that happens. The person that needs to find you finds you, and it's that perfect moment. And it's sort of that hero's journey. If you know about the hero's journey, it's this person that comes in. They're considered the gift, and it's either their wisdom or they have the resource that you need. Right? It's not necessarily needing to go to that event because they are the one person that's going to give you what you need. It could just be that what they say is what you needed, or maybe they have the website or the app or something. And so you needed to be at that event so you could get what you needed out of that experience. And so it's the gift part of the hero's journey, and it's being brave enough and open. And I think if you do that, you open yourself up to just try, it always shows up. I've never had an experience where it never showed up.
No, I agree also with that, taking steps. But I'm interested to just, before we wrap it up, I mean, we can have some more questions, of course, but I have one question more regarding your journey.
Okay.
You talk about the hero's journey, and of course, everybody has a hero's journey, right? But what does it mean for you today to speak up? How has that transformed your life?
It's been incredible. It transformed every relationship in my life because I finally felt like I could be myself. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie and say that it was a party and flowers and roses and balloons all of the time, because it really wasn't. Because I found that I was holding on to relationships that really weren't meant to stick around any longer. They had served their purpose, and it was time for them to move on. It was time for me to move on. And the more I got in aligned with my inner voice, I could just be myself effortlessly. It wasn't so hard. I didn't have to hide parts of myself. I didn't feel any shame. I didn't walk around, being really careful about what I say over here and using a different voice over there and with that person or this family. I wasn't having to keep up all of these different roles. I could just show up as me. I felt lighter. I felt more connected to myself. I felt happier. And I felt like I could find my purpose a lot easier because I could just be me and do what I do best without having to worry about anybody else but me. And the beautiful part is I gave the bravery to my friends to do the same thing. and we started learning new things about each other. We've been friends for 20 years. But then they finally felt brave enough because I was brave enough. And that vulnerability, when we started opening up like that, it just made our friendships so much better and our connection so much better. And I was gifted opportunities that I hadn't ever had in my life because I was myself. And that felt really good because it was like, oh, I do have value. I do have something to say. And it was because I was able to be myself that those opportunities showed up for me.
This episode will resonate with so many. Thank you so much for. Before we close up this beautiful conversation, Sarah, where can our listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about your incredible program and also your insight?
Yeah, so my program's called A Courageous Journey, and I would love to work with people and walk along their journey and help them find their voice, their inner voice and their outer voice. You can find me on my website at optimistadventurer.com. And then I'm also on YouTube, Intuitive Journey with Sarah, and on Instagram, Optimist Adventurer Shop. And that's a great way to connect with me and message me. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to send them my way.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for. Do you have something you want to some final words to the listeners before we wrap it up here? Is there something more that you want to add to the beautiful conversation?
Yeah, I want to encourage people not to lose hope because there's a lot of really wonderful people out there that want to help and they want you to be who you really are. And authenticity and vulnerability take courage, but I think it's really important because the more we listen to our own voice and we use that discernment, we can feel empowered to then help other people, and it sort of becomes a ripple effect. And you really don't know the impact you have until you're willing and courageous enough to step out and do that and to speak up and to say something and to say no more. And that has shown me over time that everybody wants that, and we need people brave enough to step up and do it. And other people then can do the same thing. And you're leaving an impact behind you, whether you know it or not. And so just keep that hope alive, keep believing in yourself, and keep making an effort every single day, even if it's the smallest effort. You just ask yourself a question in the mirror that morning. You just don't know the kind of impact that's going to have on you and the people around you. And so just love yourself, start with the self, and then move outward and worry about everybody else down the road. Worry about you in a really respectful, honorable way to honor you, and just lead with love. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to do. And yeah, I want everyone to just love themselves and know that they matter. And we all see you and we hear you.
Thank you for those wonderful words, Sarah. And I agree with you. And for your listeners, your voice matters, right? And what Sarah says here is you need to be heard, and you don't have to do it alone. We are here with you. People are in the same situations, and we can get through it together. And thank you again for your insight, Sarah. And for the people listening, if this episode resonates you and touched you as it did for me, because I also resonate with you regarding this. So please share it to someone that perhaps also need to hear this, because getting your voice heard, I mean, you are worthy of it, right? So keep on conversation with the people around you, and let's continue lifting each other up. And let's create a world that we don't feel that is some bad thing to keep. Yeah, you don't have to suffer in silence, right? You can speak up. So don't forget to subscribe if this episode resonates with you. And until next time, thank you, Sarah, again. And trust your strength and speak up the truth, your inner truth. And remember, you are worthy of it, and letting your voice be heard. So thank you for this episode, and until next time. Bye.
Thank you
Bye,
for having
Sarah.
me. Bye. Thank you.